Hey, good morning. Good to see you here today. Good to have you with us. Overflow, up top, coffee shop. Good to have you with us today. I don't know if you ever have one of those days. It's like this for me today. It's one of those days where it's just like, things seem a bit off. Maybe you're kind of going through like a weird moment and it's just kind of like, man, I don't really want to do anything. Maybe some of you are like, I don't really want to be here today. Sometimes you feel like that. But then you show up to church and you're like, but I know I need to be here because I know this is where I need to be. And I'm backstage and I'm praying. I'm just like, all right, Lord, you kind of know my heart. You know what's going on. And as I'm literally praying that, Erica's up here on stage. And at that moment, she says, I sought the Lord. He heard and he answered. I'm like, all right, Lord. All right. I need that. I hear you. I know you hear me. And sometimes it's good to be reminded of that, right? Because I think we can just be honest. Sometimes we carry things around. It's like we sang a song earlier and it was like, God has everything that I need, but sometimes I don't feel like he has all that I want. And that's like the reality of sometimes the things that we deal with as human beings. But then when you really think about it, God truly has everything that we need. And that's a difference in how we walk. And today we're closing out this series called Still Scarred, and it's all about finding redemption for the scars that you have. How can we take these things that are painful to us and then turn around and find a way, or how can God use some things that seem so dark or so broken in our life? Every scar that you have physically tells a story. Every scar that you have in life metaphorically tells a story. I got a scar right here on my right calf. It's right there, all right? And I got it several years ago when my oldest son was playing t-ball and I was coaching t-ball. And I was taking down some banners. We had this team banner and I'm taking the banners down. I had this razor blade and I'm just popping off the like little zip ties and going down and go pop, just like that. I mean, it was so quick. And I'm like, man, I don't know, that was close to my leg, right? But I didn't feel anything until I looked down and I started seeing that I am bleeding profusely. And now I'm like, okay, I cut myself, right? With a razor blade, I just razor bladed myself. And I'm starting to like bleed out. And I don't know about you, but like I freak out over blood and all kind of things. Like my wife, she can watch TLC and she wants to see all the surgery stuff. And people have like 600-pound life. They're like, I want to see it. I'm like, I don't want to see none of it, right? And some of y'all like, Dr. Pimple Popper, and you're like, I like to see the good. Y'all are nasty, all right? I don't like to see none of that. I don't want to see none of that. And I'm bleeding out, and I'm freaking out, and I'm like, we got to get our stuff. We got to go to the hospital. Like, we got to go right now. My arm's getting tingly, right? And I have like this weird, I don't know, like, we got a lot of medical people in here. You have to tell me later. But like, I'm like in the car and I'm trying to stop this bleeding. Someone's got me a Gatorade. We're trying to go now to the hospital. We got a baby, we got my son, he's like 5 years old. And we're going to the hospital and my arm locks up like this, like it locks. I'm like, I'm like, I don't know. My wife's like, how you doing? I'm like, I don't know. How am I doing? Freaking out. Right? And we get to the hospital and the lady's like, the nurse is like, open the door. And I'm like, I cannot open the door. Like I'm showing her my arm. Like, what is going on right now? You open the door. Like, what kind of service is this? Right? And I get stitches and I end up living. I don't know if you know, like this is still, this is still my real leg. I didn't have to get an amputation or anything, but kind of wild. I'm just really weak, right? Queasy. But I still have that scar there, and I think about it. Like I push on it, I'm like, oh, dude, like I just sliced myself. It's so wild. And you think about it, all of us have like these little scars, like, and we could tell like these crazy stories of like scars that we have in our life. And same thing is true when it comes to just like the scars you have that have happened to us in life, like things that have happened to us. And one of the things that I've been just really moved by, and we've talked about this as a staff, there's been so many stories, so many of your stories that have been shared with us that have honestly been just very powerful. Sometimes it's very humbling when you hear someone share about something that's been really painful in their life and now how you are using that now is just truly amazing to hear how God is working in your lives. And today I want to talk about how you actually can use your scars. Some of you are here and you might not be there yet. You might not feel like your scar is a source of like redemption. You may not feel like God can use this. You don't see how it will be used in your life. And I want to talk about how we can do that. And as I was going through this series, a lot of you know, and some of you may not, but when I'm writing series out and I'm praying kind of through the year, I like to be far ahead. I don't like to, write a message and I'm going to speak it like 3 days later. So I'm usually anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks out. Okay, so I like to write ahead. So I'm writing this message and I'm closing the series out. And sometimes I can get so caught up in the theme of what I'm trying to do to stick with the theme that I lose track of real reality. So for instance, the original message was gonna be called when your scar doesn't heal. And I'm talking to Pastor Colin about it and he's like, but isn't a scar technically already healed because it's called a scar? And I was like, I'm an idiot. Yeah, you're right. That's absolutely true. All right. So he got me and I had to change it all up. Right. I'm like, oh my gosh, who thinks like that? Who's dumb like that? I am. I thought like that. So we changed it. But how do we actually use our scars? In 2 Corinthians, there's a guy named Paul, and he's a big character in the New Testament because he writes 13 of the letters in the New Testament. He writes 13. So you see his story first in Acts, and just a quick synopsis of his life. He was anti-Christian, tried to have him killed, thrown in jail. He ends up becoming one of the greatest church planters, missionaries we've ever seen throughout history. God radically changed his life, and he talks about some scars that he has in his life. And in the book or the letter of 2 Corinthians, he's about 20, 25 years into ministry, so he's been doing this thing for a while. He'd be very similar where I'm at. I've been doing this thing now since 2006, so 20 years this year. That hit me right now, dude, that's wild. All right, so I graduated Bible college 20 years ago, and I've been serving God full-time since then in all various roles. And he is writing to the Corinthians because this is a messed up church. Now, there's a lot about Corinth that I think relates to Americans today, some of their struggles. There's a lot of the similarities that the Americans struggle with today, very wealthy, prominent, but they're trying to follow God. But I love it. This church is so messed up that Paul's like, I got to write you a second letter, all right? And you can read 1 Corinthians for yourself to see some of the things that they're doing. But this follow-up letter comes about 6 months to a year later, and we'll be in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. It'll be on screen for you. I want to read, we'll start on verse 5. Listen to what Paul is saying. He's saying, that experience is worth boasting about. Now, you have to read verses 1 through 4 to be like, what experience is he talking about? Paul literally tells them, he's like, I don't know. He's like, if I was tripping out. He's like, I don't know if I was this was reality, this was in my subconscious. I don't know if I was dreaming. He's like, but I went to heaven and I experienced God. I experienced the joy of what heaven is. I got to be with Jesus. And he's talking about what an amazing experience that is. And he says right there, that experience is worth boasting about. He's like, I could brag about how amazing that thing is. He says, but I'm not gonna do it. I will only boast about my weaknesses. Now, that's something most people don't like to talk about. Hey, tell me about yourself. Well, I really suck at life, I'm a screw up. I'm constantly late, right? Or I'm a bad husband, or I'm a bad, whatever. You start feeling like I'm a bad mom, or I overeat, whatever. No one really tends to talk about all their weaknesses. We don't like to talk about our weaknesses. Paul says, I want to brag about what makes me fall short. That's what I want to talk about. And in verse 6, he says, if I wanted to boast, he said, I would be no fool in doing so, because I would be telling the truth. So in other words, it's he's like, hey, not only can I talk that talk, but I could back it up. He's like, I can back up the things I'm talking about. And he's like, and I could brag about the things I experience because it would be truthful. He said, but I'm not going to do it because I don't want anyone to give me credit beyond what they can see in my life or hear in my message. And Paul kind of talking about this whole idea of I got to experience Christ. And you'll see later on, he writes, to live is Christ, but to die is gain. And I understand why he writes that, because when you get to experience heaven in all its fullness, you realize what we're missing out here on this broken world. And he says, man, to just die, that would be gain. To be with Christ, that would be incredible. But instead, Paul's going to focus on his weaknesses, which is just really kind of strange. He said, trust me, I can brag and I can talk about all these amazing things and I can back it up. I'm not just talk. I actually can prove the things that I've done, but I want to talk about how weak of a man that I am. Verse 7, he says, even though I have received such wonderful revelations from God, so to keep from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and to keep me from being proud. Now, this is kind of a lot going on here because what he's saying is God loves me so much that he has given me revelations that only you could dream about. You wish you could experience some of the things that I've experienced in my life. I literally met God face to face. I went blind for a second there, but I saw him. That's why I'm an apostle. And then God allowed me to see heaven in its fullness, and I'm there. But I'm not going to talk about it, even though he's telling us about it. He's like, I'm not going to talk about it. He's like, I just want you to know that I am a very spiritually connected person to the Lord. Now, you got to understand Paul a little bit because before he started following Jesus, he was a Pharisee. And we saw how Pharisees, they were anti-Jesus. They did not believe he was the true Messiah. And Pharisees were already very arrogant, prideful people. Okay, that's his background. That's where Paul is. He was trained under one of the greatest teachers known in that time. He was very well educated. He accomplished a lot. So he had a lot of accolades in his corner. He had a big ego. Right, that's a nice way to say it. But when he started following Jesus, that doesn't mean your arrogance magically goes away. All right? So for those of you who start following God, if you're an arrogant person, you're still arrogant. You just now have to start becoming into the image of Christ. That's why Paul said we're transformed by the renewing of our mind. So Jesus instantly changes our heart, but our brains are still the same. Which means if you were struggling with addiction before Christ, you're going to struggle with addiction after Christ. And now we got a growth process to go through. Right? So this is what's happening here. And Paul is saying all right, I still struggle with this arrogance and pride. And he's like, and I could talk about it, but I don't want to. And honestly, I relate to him. We had this event several years ago, and we had about 20 people in the room, and they're all people that were new to Cornerstone, and we always kind of would ask around, hey, tell me, what makes you want to come back? Why did you come back to the church? And we were trying to learn and grow and hear from people and try to encourage different things or whatever. And this lady speaks up, and she says, she's like, I just want to say I've been attending Cornerstone. She's like, but what's such a big deal to me is that my teenage daughter's been showing up, and the first time she came, she absolutely loved it. She went on and on about how amazing the speaker is and how funny he is and how great he was and how moved she was. And she kept going on, and I'm standing there, and now honestly, I'm getting kind of embarrassed. I'm like, all right, this is, thank you. What else did she say? But also all right, thank you so much. And I was just like, thank you so much. And I was like, thank you so much. That's good. And she's like, no. Pastor's like, that's just it. She wasn't talking about you. There was another dude on staff at the time. She was talking about him. And I was like, you want to talk about in the room, deflated ego. I was like, whoosh. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, everyone can go home now. All right, I'm going to go eat some chocolate by myself, get in my feelings a little bit. She was totally deflated ego. I can relate to Paul, all right? That just because you have certain struggles before Christ doesn't mean they magically go away. You're going to deal with those things, and you see that here in Paul. I have to guard pride too, right? And I think if we're honest, a lot of us, it's one of those things that we can allow to feed into us, and we have to be careful what you allow to feed into your life. So we're going to look at 3 different things today. How to use the scar. How do you use the scar in your life? Some of you, like I said, you might not be there yet, but I believe that God will always use this pain in your life. The first idea is this. You got to name it, just don't let it define you. Okay? You have to name the scar, but don't let it define you. It's very important that if you have something in your life, that pain, that darkness, that moment, you got to be able to name it. Because when you name something, it begins to lose its power over you. You got to be able to call it out, because when you start calling it out, you see that this thing is not as strong. It doesn't have a grip on you like you thought that it did. Verse 7 again, I want to read that again. Paul says it this way: even though I've received such wonderful revelations from God, so to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and to keep me from becoming proud. He said that this thing, God gave me this thorn in my flesh to literally keep me from being able to be arrogant, from being able to be proud. And I want you to understand that just because you have something you're dealing with in your life doesn't mean that you lack faith, doesn't mean that you don't trust God. It just means sometimes the Christian life is not easy and you have a lot to carry. And some of us carry different burdens, and we may not ever understand why we have to carry the things that we carry. Some of the things that we shoulder, it seems overwhelming. You just have to know you don't have to do it on your own. Some of us think we got to shoulder these things ourselves, and Paul talks about this thing. He says, look, he's like, I don't understand. God gave it to me as a check in my spirit so that I will always remember that it's not about me, but it's about the Lord. And he said, it was given to me. In other words, it was inflicted on him. God allowed this thing from Satan to happen into his life so that it would keep him in check. I want you to understand that the enemy can't touch you unless the Lord allows it. Now that's deep thought there. You can't just face opposition without the Lord allowing it. And if the Lord allows it, there's always purpose behind it. He's allowing you to go through it for a reason. He can't work against any believer. And some people, they speculate, theologians, they're very different on what the issue was. A lot of it think most likely some sort of physical ailment, probably potentially, whether it's chronic health conditions, maybe something with his eyes. We don't necessarily know specifically. It's not, said verbatim what Paul's thorn was, but he dealt with some issues, most likely physical. And it was this constant reminder that he can't do this on his own. So I'm going to name this thing. I'm going to name it. He's like, but I'm not defined by this scar. Some of you have had some deep pain and you've allowed it to define your life. And what Paul is saying is, no, I'm naming it because I won't let it define who I am. I am not that thing. I am defined by Christ. You can acknowledge your pain without surrendering your identity. And that's what Paul's doing here. He's acknowledging there's this thing. He's like, I got this thorn in my flesh. It's like literally like it's this messenger from Satan is just come in my life. And this thing is just painful to me. I'm dealing with this hurt that I'm walking around with. I'm literally doing God's will. Like I'm following Jesus. Just because you follow Jesus, like Paul's life is an example that, hey, not everything is great. Sometimes when you start following Jesus, life gets harder because you put a target on yourself and say, enemy, I'm walking your direction and I'm taking what you think is yours. So the enemy does what? He begins to fire his darts at you because now you are an obstacle to that ultimate mission of taking people away from Christ. So Paul says, no, this is difficult. I'm walking through this thing, but I'm going to name it, and I'm letting you know I have this thorn, this scar, it does not define me. The second thing we're going to see here is that God's timing is not God's absence. So often in your life, we just wonder where God is because you've gone through this dark moment, and there are some things I just honestly, I cannot tell you why you experienced what you did. Some of you have some dark, painful moments, and I don't know. No human being can say they fully know. Only God truly knows why certain things have happened to you in your life. It's a reminder that our world is broken. This world is full of sin, and it's not going to be completed until Jesus comes back. That's when everything will be restored. So it's our reminder, too, this is just a broken, depraved world that has fallen short. So there's just bad things that happen, but at the same time, why you had to walk through it, I don't know. And Paul continues on, starting in verse 8. He says, so I was given this thing from Satan. And listen to what Paul says. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. You ever pray like, God, I just need you to handle this. God, I need you to take this thing away. He says on 3 different occasions. So in other words, it doesn't mean like Paul didn't pray about it all the time, but like there was 3 specific times he's saying, I am begging God. Like he had a connection to Jesus like nobody else. And he's begging Jesus, take this thing away from me. And listen to what happens there, verse 9. Each time he said, Jesus, my grace is all you need. Do you believe that? Like as followers of Jesus, like do you believe God's grace is all that we need? My power works best in weaknesses. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. God wants you to know. That's just a cell phone. That was a dumb joke. All right, so you know what I'm saying. I was too serious and I tried to be silly. So, but you know what I'm saying. All right. Paul is begging. He's begging to God, take this thing from me. 3 different times. He's asking God, please take this from me. And then he's saying, no, Jesus is telling him, my grace is all that you need. All you need is me. And I want to work through you, Paul, when you're at your lowest moment, your weakest. I want to work through you in your weaknesses. I love Adrian Rogers, powerful pastor back in the day. He said this, God's grace is both the desire and the power to do the will of God. It's God's grace that we can actually desire to do God's will, and it's God's grace where we have the power to actually do God's will. We can't do it on our own. And if you think you can do it on your own, you've greatly misunderstood how we need a Savior. I love how he said that God's power works best through us when we realize we can't do it on our own, when we are weak. I can't do it by myself. God's silence is not his rejection in your life. He's doing something there. It's his redirection. We kind of say it like this. God is often closest where he feels quietest. He's often the closest to you. And some of you, you're walking through these like dark valleys and you're just wondering where God is, but he's so close, we don't even realize he's with us. He's like right there with you. Where he feels the quietest, he's holding us. And we realize that we're hopeless on our own, and so we see God's grace as our way through. It's his grace that allows us to get through the thing that we're dealing with. And when you experience like the grace of God, the weight of the world just kind of like lifts off your shoulders. Paul understood, I have to carry this scar with me. He's like, and this scar is still painful. This scar, it seems fresh even though it's not. And we know that he carried it with him all the way until his death. He suffered and endured this scar. But yet you look at what Paul accomplished, and none of that could have happened had Paul not had this thing. Paul needed to rely on the strength of God. And so he had to carry this thing with him his whole life, because it was the way that God wanted to work through him in his life. Some scars will always be painful. I've got, a lot of times you might see me and I'll move my right ankle. When I talked about 20 years ago, I graduated Bible college, and coming home from visiting my family, they lived in Idaho at the time, and I was gonna visit them before I was moving to Alabama and to work as a student pastor. Long story short is a guy hit us head on. He was killed in this accident. My leg was stuck. Car's on fire. It's all kind of like the kind of Hollywood's like, this car's going to blow up. I'm going to die, all these kind of things. And obviously I lived, right? I'm here. And I pulled my leg out from the crushed car where my leg was stuck. And to this day, my ankle hurts every single day. I've had it looked at. I've had it checked at. It's just one of these things that like, it's just going to be with me for the rest of my life. I'm constantly reminded every single day, like, dude, I should be dead. Like, there's so many times, like, I'm driving, I tense up at certain things, and sometimes I get pretty good, but it's my reminder. God was there for me. And I know, like, I shouldn't be here, and my ankle reminds me every day, like, man, okay, when I get off track, I know God has a purpose and a plan, but I still feel this pain every day. And the same thing is true for you. You might feel that pain every day. But I'm telling you, when you stop looking at yourself, throwing pity party or telling yourself how horrible this thing is, I get it, it's bad. And like, we'll sit there and we will cry with you. Like, I cannot imagine some of the things some of you have walked through. But when you stop looking at yourself and you start looking to the Lord and you say, all right, God, I'm giving this thing to you. It's painful every day, but I want to walk with you with it. You see him use it in your life. And then it becomes this source of like, okay, I understand why I had to walk through that. And even though this is painful to me, if it can bring someone to you, then it's all worth it. It's all worth it. Which brings us to this third thought this morning. How to use this scar is you just got to trust in God's purpose for your life. You got to trust. Paul, he's praying. He's saying, I'm begging God. Like, now you have to know, like when Paul's saying, like, I'm begging God, like he's having a conversation literally with Jesus. He's talking to him. And Jesus is like, my grace is all you need. As a matter of fact, Paul, I want to work through you in your weakest spot because I want people to see me. I don't want them to see you. And Paul, content to do that. Listen to what happens. Then I want to read verse 9. Again, each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I'm glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. Listen to what he says. Listen to what Paul says. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses, in the insults, the hardships, the persecutions, the troubles that I suffer for Christ, because when I am weak, then I am strong. He says, listen, I can brag about my shortcomings. I can brag when someone ridicules me or mocks me or points at me, because in my weakest place, that's exactly where I need to be. You want to like go like old school. This is so dumb. I don't know. I just got to get out of my head. ADHD stuff. Like it's like Popeye in his lowest moment. It's like boom, in my weakest spot, I'm getting beat up by Brutus. It's the can of spinach time, and everything turns around. Right? If you don't even know some kids don't even know who Popeye is. You're missing out on some classic stuff right there. In his weakest spot, he becomes his strongest, and he's saying like in my life, when I feel like the shell of a man that I am, he's like, God starts showing up and he starts working through me, and things happen that would never happen apart from him. And he says, and I take pleasure in it. I love when people count me out. I love when people point at me and say, you'll never do that. You'll never be that thing. And I can relate to so much of that in myself. Like there's so many things that I've been told in terms of just ministry stuff or whatever. It's a whole different kind of world and reality when you serve in like church world, because honestly, a lot of people in church world are just horrible. That's just kind of the truth. And there's some amazing people. But you get told certain things about what you're going to be, what you're going to do, blah, blah. I love when people are going to count me out, because that's when I know God's about to show up. And I've seen it in this church over and over and over and over and over and over again. This whole idea of like, nothing's going to come of this thing. And I go, this is great, because I know I ain't doing it. And I can look back and I can promise you everything that our church has done, everything our church has experienced, the stuff we saw this past year or this past Easter and all throughout the year. Some of you have been here for a while now. You know, that ain't me. And I can brag on God because I know he's the one doing it. How cool is it that we get to be a part of it though? We get to be a part of that. And that's what Paul is saying there. He says, you know what? I celebrate God's presence in my pain because he's about to show out. And he's doing something powerful. So we say it like this: your problems can never exhaust God's provisions. Some of us feel like we're asking too much of God. I don't want to ask God. I would feel like I'm just so needy. Your problems will never exhaust what God has. His provisions are limitless. And he gives us exactly what we need, when we need it, whenever we need it, however we need it, as long as we need it. It never runs dry. He's a river of life that continues to flow. And when you begin to tap into the power of like the Lord and what he's doing, you find this endless stream of like his strength. When we say like for those who have a relationship with Jesus, like the Holy Spirit lives inside of you, like that's literally God, one part of the Trinity. He's fully like 100% God lives inside of you. And if the Holy Spirit lives inside of you, the one who rose Jesus from the dead, that's in you, why do you doubt the things you go through? There is a confidence in the walk that we have moving forward, because it's like, hey, I'm not doing this on my own. I'm walking in the strength of God, and I don't have to do this anymore. I know he's doing it. And so I trust him. I trust him when I'm messed up or hurt or broken. I love like my wife, right? Like there are times like we're at home and like she can't open a jar. Give me the jar. Give me the jar. Bow up on that thing and I open that jar and I'm like, this is why you keep me around. Because she honestly wouldn't need me outside of that, right? Like, I'm gonna open this jar for you, girl. Bam, put it down. Like, that's what I do. That's what I do. We can never deplete God's resource. This is spiritual maturity, all right? This is like when you think like, what does spiritual maturity look like? It's learning to trust God beyond the outcomes of your life. That's spiritual maturity. When you realize, man, I'm going through this, and some of you will be going through it or are going through it or just went through it. Spiritual maturity is saying, all right, I can see God through this. I'm waiting to see God through this. Paul never got the outcome he wanted, never. He never got what he asked for, but yet he did more because of it. He still followed the Lord. 13 letters of the New Testament are recorded for us today because he was in his weakest moments in life. You can read most of Paul's letters. He didn't even write them. He had someone else write them for him. He'd write at the very end, this is Paul, I'm writing in my own handwriting here. He couldn't even write his own letters. So here's a man who did more for the name of Christianity after the resurrection of Christ than probably any of us ever will, and he couldn't do it, but yet God chose to do it through him. It would never have happened unless he was weak. So maybe this pain in your life, this scar that is still deep, you're asking God, I need you to take this away. He might not. He might not. And you might not ever understand why. But I can tell you from mine, and I've shared a lot of this, so I'm not going to today. I've shared it so many times throughout the years. So I've gone through some deep scars. All of it prepared me for the moment that one day I would be leading and pastoring a church. Something I always knew I would do when I started following the Lord. I just didn't know what it would look like. But if I would have done it on my own, it wouldn't look like it does today. And so I look back and go, okay, that spot in my life, yeah, worth it. Man, this part right here, that was dark. But I see today, I get 15 years of hindsight, it was worth it. And so you're walking through something today. I can't wait for you to experience the moment where you're talking to this person and you share them your story and you see this change in their life. Maybe they're drawn to Christ because of you. You save someone's life because you share your story. You change someone's life because they hear your words. And in that moment, you're going to realize, God, all of that pain and darkness, it was worth it. That's how you use the scar. God will never leave us alone. We trust him through it. And in those moments, we find redemption for your scars. Let's pray.